Vaughn, I wonder, you are on the trail right now. How is Trump talking about his indictments on stage in front of his supporters?
Right, Alicia. Look, I mean, he has taken his legal peril on the road. He is not running from this. He is not trying to mask the fact that he has been criminally charged and is facing pending trials. Instead, he is using the stages and the microphone and the millions of viewers, not only on his own social media accounts, but also on right-wing outlets, to try to galvanize support for him, not only on the legal front, but the political one, too. Yesterday, I was in Iowa with him. He's about to take the stage here in Nevada. And yesterday in Iowa, his message was, they are trying to silence me because they want to silence you. Another line of his was that they are trying to take his freedom because he's standing in the way of their freedom. And this, for Donald Trump, really is key and important for him, because he is making the case that this is all political effort to undermine the MAGA conservative movement. And if he is not there, then Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are going to be able to continue to control the Department of Justice and undermine and keep them from advancing their own policy initiatives forward.
Well, David, let's talk about some of these threats, because in response to threats against the DOJ, the Washington Post adds, quote, at the Justice Department, officials have responded by trying to keep the names of prosecutors and agents working the Trump case from becoming public in official documents, congressional hearings, and less formal conversations about the case. That's a tricky task, given that prosecutors' names are listed in public court filings, and their names and information about witnesses are accessible to Trump as a defendant in the case. I mean, we do a lot of like, this surprises me, none of this surprises me. I think it's important to talk, David, about just how unusual and dangerous this behavior is.
Yeah, and I think to do so, Alicia, we have to examine Donald Trump's personal behavior and then kind of the political narrative and campaign he's running. The personal behavior needs to be called out for what it is. First, this is a lie. He has not been unduly targeted. A grand jury decided that there was sufficient evidence to bring charges. That is true in the federal case related to Mar-a-Lago. It is true in the case in New York under Bragg. Every step of the way, prosecutors have not been able to unilaterally decide to bring charges, but a grand jury or a judge or a court has had to say that sufficient evidence exists. So Donald Trump is lying. Secondly, he's engaging in behavior that is rawly dangerous to the prosecutors, the judges that he sometimes calls out, and to the FBI and to investigators. We know that. We've seen that. After the Mar-a-Lago investigation, when he went online, we saw kind of a lone wolf attempt at an Ohio FBI office. We continue to see the base mobilized, if you will, and in an offensive position. And that is because of Donald Trump's language that he will be the retribution. This is a campaign of retribution. And honestly, it goes beyond Trump himself then when House Republicans and the Republican Party uses the term weaponization. It's not a casual term. To tell Republicans that the government has been weaponized against you suggests that they are a victim, that they are under attack, and therefore they are right to respond and fight back. And what it ultimately does is it catalyzes within the Republican constituency individuals who are unstable and following the lead of the former president, now candidate for president again, or House Republicans, and it creates personal risk and danger to investigators, prosecutors, and judges. Donald Trump needs to be condemned for his behavior.